Hi, doctor. Are you currently seeing patients with shoulder pain? What about frozen shoulder? What if I could teach you a neurological treatment system in which you could literally take a person from frozen shoulder to a full range of motion in 2 visits? And this system is so powerful that we guarantee results in 2 visits, or we don't accept the patient for care. Hi, I'm Dr. Andy Barlow. I'm a board certified chiropractic neurologist. I also carry a fellowship in functional neurology, and every Wednesday night at 5 p.m., I'm giving a 1-hour seminar free of charge. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help your community. I'm here to help our profession go to the next level. I personally look forward to seeing you every Wednesday night. I want to completely change your life and change your community's life. And I can help you do that because I've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of doctors from Europe to Canada, all the way to New Zealand with these types of health issues, okay? So I look forward to seeing you Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Central on the webinar. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you on the internet.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Anthony with Edge on Regenerative Medicine Show. I want to thank you all for coming to check out Dr. Ryan Wood. This is going to be an interesting show today. We're going to be talking about something that I've never heard. And before we go forward, Dr. Ryan Wood, he is a naturopathic physician, also a chiropractic physician. I love the saying tailoring regenerative medicine. He's also in the Northwest, actually in my area, Northwest Regenerative Orthopedics. You can find him at 11790 Southwest Barnes Road, and that's Building A, Suite 129 in Portland, Oregon. You can also find his website at nwregen.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Woods, for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so today, guys, we have something exciting. The topic, if I can say it correctly, is we're going to be talking about what is stellate ganglion blocks.
It's stellate ganglion blocks.
Stellate. Yep. I mean, I thought it was like a Star Wars theme. I was like,
yeah, kind of. It feels like it sometimes, doesn't it?
No. Hey, no pun intended. We won't go there. But I know that you have the saying with that is calming anxiety and responses. So let's start off. What is stellate ganglion blocks?
Sure. So the stellate ganglion, or you want me to talk about the block? So the stellate ganglion block, I'll kind of wrap it up into one. Stellate ganglion is a ganglion in our neck, and if you don't really know what a ganglion is, it's sort of a mini brain. You know, you've got the big one in between your shoulders. At least most of us hope we do. And if that's working really well, you know, there's other little spots in our body where we have these bundles of nerves that do sort of microprocessing, little checks and balances stations. And one of those is in the neck, and it's called the stellate ganglion. It's part of the autonomic nervous system. So that for some people, that's that buzzword of fight or flight. You know, you get scared in the woods, you see a bear and your eyes get big and you're like, oh my God, I got to run from the bear. Or if you're reading that sappy book or watching the Notebook like my wife would make me do, and you're sitting on the couch crying and trying to contain yourself, that's the parasympathetic side of things. So yeah, the stellate lives.
You like the movie.
Chain.
Come on.
Don't
fight it.
We're not going to go there. Let's just go back to Star Wars.
I love it.
So yeah,
what are some of the what would you say that what are some of the main conditions that you treat with that?
So I guess you probably need a foundation for like, what is it? I mean, I just told you what the stellate is. Like, what is it? I mean, it's part of the autonomic nervous system. What does it do, right? You know, so stellate ganglion blocks is a really weird intervention. I probably talk about this for days, but I think the foundation of it is that there was some crazy scientists back in World War II that had a bunch of frozen soldiers that were prisoners of war, and they were dying from exposure, essentially. These doctors knew that the autonomic chains in our body controlled the sympathetic tone, which is that fight or flight. And what they did was they found that if they put an anesthetic on the stellate ganglion, that these, soldiers who were dying from exposure were actually living through this trauma. So yeah, these, starving German World War II prisoners and the Russian mad scientists were putting, procaine on this ganglion bundle. And sort of like this sort of a side note on that was, beyond the fact that they were living and not having vascular failure, like, just complete collapse of their systems, when they came out of the experience, they had less, back then they called it shell shock. Today we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. And there was sort of this sort of bizarre epiphany of these docs. I was like, wait a second. So I inject on this nerve bundle in the neck, and it's saving their lives from, vascular collapse. But then on the flip side, they're having less shell shock as compared to their peers, right? So I think that's kind of the history on how we found out about it. And it sort of got lost in the annals of medicine until I think around 45. And then in the 80s, some Finnish doctors started using it. And then it was sort of picked back up in the US in the late 90s as a treatment for sort of complex regional pain syndrome or compartment syndrome, where you get, burning and nerve issues that are basically localized to an extremity. Again, they started treating people for like hand numbness, tingling, burning, nerve stuff in the arm. And people that had, at the same time they had those symptoms, if they also had PTSD, what they were noticing is that their PTSD got better and their general anxiety got better. So, that's sort of the history on what happened and how it came about. And then some really brilliant doctors on the East Coast, Eugene Lipof and Sean Mulvaney, who's a retired Lieutenant Colonel, Navy SEAL, amazing man, brilliant mind, love him. I've got to study under him a little bit. These guys sort of, pioneered this research into using stellate ganglion blocks for the treatment of complex cases in PTSD and things like that. So they're treating soldiers and, active first responders, because right now with COVID and all the first responders have been through the heinousness of the last year, military veterans who've suffered wartime, things like that, sexual assault survivors, I see quite a bit of that. Vertigo, all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, I actually had a case recently of a patient that had ringing in her ear, right? And she had no other, she tried everything. I mean, everything, otologists, everything. She's been everywhere, seen everybody. She's had corticosteroid injections in her inner ear. Nothing seemed to help. And for some weird off the wall journal somewhere, there was a correlation between ringing in the ears, tinnitus, and stellate blocks. I did a stellate block on her, and lo and behold, it improved her ringing in her ears. So go figure. There's lots of indications for it. So
why do we not hear about this? Like, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I've been in the field for a long time, working with a lot of doctors, and maybe I misread it or skipped it. Why do we not hear about this?
I think medicine in general in this country is a slow-moving snail. When research comes out, it's a decade before people recognize it. It's another decade before it gets implemented. It's another decade before it's covered by insurance. So, you're 30 years one way or another. I think, and it came out in like 98, Lipof sort of brought it back into the forefront. It wasn't until like, I think 2017, 2018 that the Wall Street Journal ran an article on their front page, and I think the title of it was something like, can a single injection cure PTSD or something like that? And I think it was like June 2018 or something. So it really hadn't hit sort of mainstream media until just 2 years ago. I never learned about stellate ganglion blocks in school, except for the treatment of complex regional pain syndrome or compartment syndrome, right? So I learned about it only in that aspect. I never learned about it for the treatment of PTSD. And I've been doing this for about 5 years, so I'm way ahead of the curve on most people on this. But yeah, it's just an underutilized, underrecognized treatment option that most interventional pain docs know how to do, but don't really use it for the treatment of PTSD. So I can't tell you any other reason why it's not out there more than that. It's extremely effective too. I mean, the most current articles that come out of the military, the DOJ, because they're the ones studying it, they show dramatic improvement. And there was just a recent article that came out, I think it was November. They started injecting the stellate ganglion plus the upper cervical ganglion, which is now what I'm doing. And it's showing an even more dramatic positive outcome for people that have PTSD. So the first 4 years I did it, I just injected the stellate. And in the last 3 months, I've been injecting the stellate ganglion plus the upper cervical ganglion. So it's, you know, no, it doesn't. I had a guy in here yesterday, as a matter of fact, when I was injecting on him, he was actually watching my ultrasound screen while I was doing the entire procedure and commenting how cool it was, because you get to see all the anatomy and you watch the needle go in. You know, and I use lots. I'm very liberal with my anesthetics, so I make it easy. I mean, I'm a needle guy, stab people for a living. Let's face it. Yeah, I can't get around the fact that this is what I do. So if I'm gonna own it, but I'm gonna make it as comfortable as possible. And so I use lots of anesthetic. But so yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Do you feel the difference right away? Do you see a difference right away, or does it take about a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months to notice any changes?
Well, let me just describe kind of how I theorize it works. And then sort of, I think once you kind of understand the circle, like what is going on, then you can kind of see how it works. So basically, the way I like to describe that is in evolution, you know, if you believe that in evolution, we have this big brain in our heads, you know, hopefully we all have one. And there's different parts, and you know, some people talk about sort of the evolution of 5 sort of things in your brain, like the 5 sort of evolutionary steps. And you know, the first one is like, you know, being able to like do things like move, and then or recognizing your environment was another evolutionary step. Right. And then programming memories to stimulus in our environment, and then being able to respond to that stimulus, right? So like third brain stuff. And that, you know, that brain right there, that programming brain that programs our brain to stimuli is stored in the amygdala, sort of the limbic region of our body, which is a part of the brain that stores both trauma and also pleasure. So it's not just like, oh my God, I almost got ran over a car, and now every time I hear a car, I get triggered. You know, that's that third, that amygdala brain. And then we have like the fourth brain, which is, you know, sort of like programming things like, you know, Pavlov's response, like, oh, I'm hungry, and things like that. And then we've got the cognitive brain, which is, you know, our complex emotional, that's you and I. That's the one that's making my lips talk right now and controlling these emotions going on in my brain. So, but going back to the amygdala and the limbic brain, that's like our fear-based brain, right? So interestingly, the fear-based brain has a connection to our sort of adrenal glands in our, you know, sympathetic chains that sort of control adrenaline and fight or flight response, right? So what this means in English is that, you know, let's say I'm walking down the street and some car jumps the curb and almost kills me, right? And so I you know, luckily survive. But now in my primitive lizard brain, I programmed the sound of car with, oh my God, I'm gonna die, right? And that's a classic fear-based memory from a traumatic event, right? So then what happens is the next time I say I hear a car, you know, it's doing some screechy tire thing, and my brain says, you're gonna die. And it automatically does. It's a reflex. It's a primitive reflex, right? This is a reflex response. It's uncontrollable. You don't have I can turn that off or I can turn that on. It just happens, right? So, and there's a communication pathway down the autonomic chain where the stellate ganglion lives that goes all the way down to your kidney, where your adrenal medulla lives in the adrenal cortex, and it kicks off some epinephrine, adrenaline, and that chemical goes in your systemic circulation and does things like increases your heart rate, dilates your eyes, makes you infinitely aware of your surroundings. All of a sudden, time slows down, and then you get other things with that. You get the impending doom, that's anxiety, right? So the sense that something really bad is about to happen, right? Anxiety. And so right. And so what happens then is you've got this complex thing going on in your body where you get triggered for fear, and then the fear travels down this highway and it triggers your body to have a response. And now your body's reacting to it. And then your body reacting to it goes back and it stimulates your brain to reassure your brain that, yes, in fact, you actually may be dying. So your fear-based brain is now getting reinforced, right? So it's a circle. So you've got fear, response, response triggers fear, fear triggers response, right? And so you're getting this, you know, and this isn't normal, right? Because your complex brain, your hi, Dr. Ryan brain is going, wait a second, there's no car. I just heard some screeching tires. Why am I like having a panic attack all of a sudden, right? And so you're thinking through this and you're going, what is going on? Why am I having this why am I having this panic anxiety? Why am I having this, you know, trigger? Why am I feeling this way? And you can cognitively think back to, yeah, maybe it's because of that car that jumped the curb and almost killed me a while ago. But you can't get it out of you. It's there, right? And so this is PTSD. This is post-traumatic stress disorder. That's, you know, they come back from wartime situations, the horrors they live through, you know, first responders. You know, right now, all these doctors at New York during the first COVID, when it hit our shores, you know, anything like, you know, 9/11 survivors, anybody, you know, that's gone through these periods, sexual, you know, survivors, like you know, I've heard some pretty amazingly horrifying things that people do. It's shocking to me. But,
Right.
you know, so what happens then is that you've got this response and you don't really have the cognitive ability to get over it. You can use things like EMDR, which is eye movement therapy, and you can use talk therapy. And they get to the root problem, and they absolutely are an imperative thing for people that are, you know, PTSD survivors to do. But it's not necessarily getting rid of that limbically programmed, fear-based programming thing that's in our primitive lizard brain that lives back here in the corner, quietly talking to us in the middle of the night, right? So the stellate block then is a really, really crazy tool, because I can put an anesthetic on the communication pathway from our fear-based brain to our adrenal glands, and I can block our fear-based brain from triggering your body into a response, right? So I'm tricking your body into, hey, that car jumped the curb. I should be running. There's a bear chasing me in the woods. But your body's going, what are you talking about?
So
Right?
you're turning off a sensor. Now, in my brain, I'm looking at, okay, well, we're turning off a sensor. Is it turning off anything else that should not be turned off?
No, and that's the thing. It's such a brief response. So that's a great question. So when you block the stellate, you're using a medicine called ropivacaine, right? It's a anesthetic. It's a really cell-friendly. It's probably the most benign, though, you know, there's still side effects for, you know, 1 in a million or 1 in 2 million people. But it's of all the anesthetics we have in our toolbox, it's one of the most benign anesthetics there is. It's used daily by thousands and thousands of physicians to block nerves. The interesting thing about ropivacaine is it tonifies nerves, which it essentially changes their signaling. So it not only just blocks the nerve, but it actually modulates the nerve over a period of time. And this is kind of how we think stellate tends to work. Is one, you're blocking your fear-based brain from giving your body a physiologic response, right? So I'm blocking that highway. Your brain's going freaking out, but your body's not responding. So if your body's not responding, it's not reinforcing the fear-based brain. And that opens a window into people with PTSD to find a way to create neuroplastic change in their brain. And that's where like everything else comes in, like EMDR and talk therapy. So it's a part of the cog, right? The way I explain this to my patients are, look, I'm going to block the highway between your lizard fear-based brain signaling your body to have a response. It's going to give you a calming window that's going to last, you know, anywhere from months to, I don't know, I've seen a year, maybe more, longer, but it's a big window into your body's ability to separate itself from the trauma PTSD response and your body's reaction to that, right? And so in that window of time, I really, really implore people to find talk therapy and other means of help to reprogram their brain, right? Because if your brain is still having this fear-based response, we have the ability to have neuroplastic change, which means we can actually reprogram our brains, which is such a cool concept. So, you know, I send them to people that do this for a living and get them to reprogram that fear response out of their brains. Now, I think that's the most complete picture, a lot of times my patients just come in, they get the stellate, they get 2 of them in a 10-day period, and they do fantastic, right? They have such a dramatic calming in their reactions to triggers, you know? So like my soldiers, they come in, they, or my EMT first responders, they come in and they're, they went through some really heinous stuff and they can't process it because they have too much anxiety and dread. And you block them, and then all of a sudden they're able to clearly think through their issues in a calming manner without having, fight or flight response, which is damning when you're trying to, critically think through horrors that you've lived through. So yeah, and how long does it last? I mean, I've had patients that have come in and been one and done. I've taken their, PCL5 score, on these scoring sheets that I use. Low 30s is considered PTSD. I've seen people come in at a 60, couple injections get down 20, 25 points, and they're functioning at that point. I had a 59 the other day that dropped down to a 9, and I did 4 injections over 6 months with him. So he went from completely unable to sort of tolerate anything to high functioning exec again. I mean, it's pretty cool stuff.
So the repeat on this, I mean, shouldn't there be like a little tune up every, I don't know, 7 months, or how does that work? Or do you even need it? Or is everybody different case by case?
Yeah, totally different case by case. To be honest with you, I'm one of these docs that I fix what I find. I'm in that mentality. I'm not necessarily into the realm of like maintenance care for everything. Although I do think that, people that have had really, I think PTSD is such a broad spectrum of things. Over here, you might have somebody that's just got general anxiety from, they got a boss that is just a pain in the ass, and they really just, they have a hard time dealing with them, and a lot of anxiety with that, to people who've had, been sold into the sex trade industry. I mean, I've seen that. So, it's a spectrum of where you live on the scale of PTSD, right? And some people, 1 or 2 injections, I always do a series of 2. It's supported in the research. So I try to follow the research as clearly as I can. So I do the 2 blocks in 10 days. And most of the time I get a significant change in a PTSD response from people with those 2 injections. Occasionally I have people that, like, let's say I'm treating the exec for this big company here in Portland that, he's just a high functioning person. He wants to optimize his game. We might do it 2 injections, and then 6 months later we might do it. Or if I get a military guy who's really, really struggling, and he may get 2 injections, and several months later he may get 2 more, and we just kind of play it by ear. Obviously I don't. Yeah, it's case by case. It really depends. I don't have the God goggles where I can X-ray vision exactly how to fix you. And thank God I don't.
Everyone's
honestly.
different. Everyone's different level. So I mean,
everyone's different, man. And
I'm asking that because I know that people are wondering.
Oh, totally.
As I'm kind of hearing it in my, as you would say, lizard brain. So, hey, another huge question that I do have is, what would you say that maybe the top 5 or top 3 or top 7 things that you've seen that it's helped tremendously?
Well, PTSD, general anxiety, those 2 are number 1 and number 2. I think I treat those, like, that's probably 90% of the cases that I do are people that have just either they're truly suffering from PTSD, or they have a general anxiety disorder, panic attacks, just stress and anxiety in general. You see a lot of that. I do treat a lot of really, really high level execs, right? So people that are, running billion-dollar corporations and are flying all over the world and need support for that level of performance. I do it for first responders, policemen, firemen, EMT, because they face a lot of interesting, difficult things. The other thing I've noticed recently is like postpartum depression. I've had several of these cases come in recently where, I remember one of my wife's best friend went through it really bad for about a year, and we noticed that it really helped dramatically with postpartum depression, which for me was really a bizarre sort of. I had to wrap my brain around that. It took me a hot minute sort of to figure that one out. but it does help. It really, actually really helped dramatically with that. The other thing is I talked a little bit about tinnitus or ringing in the ears, like anecdotally, the hanky book I have on the shelf right there says that it's used to treat tinnitus. And yeah, and in effect, it actually does help with ringing in the ears. I've seen it several times now. So, and then what's the other things I treat for? Oh, the other one is complex regional pain syndrome or compartment syndrome. So like I had a double crush injury in a motor vehicle accident. A person was looking to their left, got in a car accident, whiplash. Their hand got went off the dashboard, and I think it was the right side. They pulled the full brachial plexus in their shoulder, and they had a chronic nerve irritation. So we hydrodissected out the nerve that was impinged and damaged from the whiplash accident, and then we did stellate blocks to control the poor autonomic response that the arm was experiencing after the trauma, which was really effective for them. So they went from like having 8 out of 10 burning chronic daily pain in their arm down to like none. So, you know, it's not always miraculous like that. You know, it's again, it's a spectrum of change. Most people have a very, very strong sense of calm about 45 minutes to an hour after the procedure. You know, 80% of people have that experience. Every once in a while, I get people that feel nothing. And then 3 or 4 days later, they're telling me they didn't feel anything. And then around the 4th or 5th, 6th day, they're like, you know, so I can't explain that. And then the other anecdotal thing that I see a lot of are bizarre dreams. So people have really lucid dreaming the night after they get the injections, which I find kind of cool. I've not experienced it personally. I haven't had lucid dreams after I've had it done to myself, but I always wanted to.
How the ringing in the ears, and the only reason I'm kind of jumped back on that one, because I know somebody personally, a cousin of mine who's been struggling with that. I might have to send him, not might.
I can kind of, you can trace the nerve back way to the ears, and I've done it. If you take the textbook out and you look at the autonomic chain signaling, like, so the fifth cranial nerve has a branch that goes up to the auditory, you know, there's like an auditory nerve that connects to the fifth cranial. It goes in the canal right there, and that the fifth cranial is part of that autonomic chain. So I think in general, what you're doing is the ropivacaine is key here. I think that's my personal opinion. I'm not 100% on this, but ropivacaine, it tonifies nerves, like it changes their physiology, right? It's not just I'm blocking a nerve, you know, and then it blocks and it's done. It's you're actually tonifying. It's like, you know, you take an acupuncture needle and you put it in your nerve and you let it, and you do your little deal with it, and you put some down let's say the bladder meridian, and, you know, and you're tonifying things, right? And the Chinese are wonderful at describing this. I think ropivacaine is a masterful anesthetic at tonifying nerves. So if, you know, I'm injecting down here and it's actually affecting the entire autonomic chain. So any of the communicating branches that go around I think that's how it works. I'm postulating, and it's an educated guess based on my understanding of anatomy and neuroanatomy. So that's my best guess on the ringing in the ears, why it works. I don't know. Other than that, I couldn't tell you.
It's amazing. No, I'm just saying, like, it's amazing. Just I've never even, again, this is my first time hearing about it. How long has this procedure been? I mean, how long has this been around? Like, do you remember?
1925 was when it was first described. So it was used in depression in 1925 in the United States. My history is a little bit, I love history, but the 25 was the first written thing I could come up with on stellates. And then in the war, World War II was really where you started to see it. I mean, talked about that a little bit in the German prisoner camps or the Russian camps where they held German prisoners. And then again and then in the 80s, it was a Finnish doctor, I don't remember his name, and then it was brought over in like 88. I think Eugene Lipof was the first guy, and then again Sean Mulvaney. So he's I think they're the guys that have been carrying the flag, to be honest with you, and they're all out east. And I sat through a couple of Sean Mulvaney's lectures and watched him do it, and, you know, taking training. So he's brilliant. He's also he's a soldier, man. He's an American. Yeah, he's a hero. So
I hear it also helps out with frozen shoulder.
Yeah, frozen shoulder. I think it helps with anything where you're going to see an autonomic response to something. So I'm not sure about frozen shoulder. I have other methods for doing that. I typically hydroinflate capsules for that. But yeah, if you're treating nerves, another interesting thing that we do in this clinic is we mix our anesthetics with 5% dextrose, sugar water. And there's a doctor, his name is Dr. Stan Lam. He's in Hong Kong. I'm going to throw a shout out to him. Probably the world's finest anatomist when it comes to hydrodissecting nerves and treating nerves under ultrasound guided imaging. Brilliant guy. I've worked, I've studied under him at seminars and such. He's just he's a joy to, he's a nice guy, and he's also exceptionally sharp. But he taught me a while back that the 5% sugar water has a modulating effect on nerves, and it's sort of like, I like to describe it as like bathing nerves in a pool of love, right? So you've got this nerve, they're highly metabolic. They take a lot of energy to function. Your brain takes a huge amount of energy to function. Nerves are an extension of your brain. So they're metabolically very active. Sugar water is their fuel of choice. If I drive a diesel, I need to put diesel in it. So nerves are the same way. If you've got a glucose running or dextrose running nerve, you put some sugar on it, it binds the capsaicin receptors, which are the TRPV1 receptors on the nerves themselves, and it also gives them some fuel for combustion. And by doing that, it helps nerves sort of calm down and it gives them some energy. And in the way that I do my treatments is we typically put some dextrose in there with the idea that we're treating the TRPV1 capsaicin receptors and also providing fuel, which is restorative. This is the regenerative medicine principles. This isn't just interventional pain management. This is like, you're taking the principles of interventional pain management, but you're applying sort of the foundations of regenerative medicine, that more holistic based response or treatment. The paradigms here is treat the whole person. The vitality, it's the naturopathic tenets. That's what we're trying to do. And so that's why we use that 5% sugar water. It has another level of calming and nutritive treatment to the stellate or anywhere else I'm putting it for that matter. But yeah.
Love it. I'm loving it. So this came out, you said roughly around 1925. We don't know anything else.
Yep.
Before that. So about
I have no idea. They had Procaine back then. Procaine came out in, I think, 1908. We're not allowed to use it in the US unless we have it compounded, which is ridiculous because it might be one of the oldest, safest anesthetics on the planet. But we can thank our bioceutical industry and our FDA for not allowing us to have Procaine. We can have lidocaine, which is cheap and more toxic, but over here we can have a fast acting, relatively safe anesthetic that's been around longer than lidocaine, but we can't use it unless we compound it. And it's sort of, we're getting into politics now. I'm going to be a little bit angry with my FDA.
Exactly. How you're, that's a whole other subject.
Yeah, totally.
I'm with you. You're like, come on. Same thing about quinine, but we won't go deep in.
Oh yeah. Or invermectin.
So I first want to say thank you so much for being on the show, but I would love for you to give us a shout out on other things that you also do. I know this is one thing that you've really are passionate about, but I know that you have many things. So, share with us maybe, a congruent of a little bit of everything.
So, I became a chiropractor because I got frustrated with traditional medicine. And, I work with some of the most brilliant doctors I know are traditional medical people like surgeons. And I work with the Institute of Functional Medicine in Portland. These people they're next level. They're brilliant. And I love them. But I got into alternative medicine, complementary alternative medicines, because I was frustrated with the establishment, right? And part of that frustration was the amount of both time and effort people give to their patients. So for me, I spend 2 hours with every single patient at every single visit, right? I only see 14 to 16 procedures a week because to me, I'm applying my naturopathic and chiropractic principles to this foundation of health where, it's a complex human being in front of me, right? So, and then the things I do are really, really delicate and highly skilled. So, I'm taking an ultrasound machine and I'm guiding needles into really interesting places. For example, a nerve in your neck. you can't just like fly by the seat of your pants and do that. You have to have good training, really good background, a very, very amazing understanding of anatomy. You had Ole Olson on your show. I graduated with him, another great physician, awesome doc. So the things that I left the chiropractic practice because I wanted a broader scope of medicine. And also I saw regenerative medicine fix a dear friend of mine, Matt Schaefer's shoulder. He had an AC tear that was grade 4, and it was reversed and almost completely resolved by prolotherapy. So I had a change in life in, the 2010s, early, like I think it was like 2011. And I went back to school. I got my second doctorate to focus 100% of my effort onto regenerative, interventional, orthopedic medicine, which is a fancy way of saying I stab people for a living and I regrow tissues and joints, right? So, I have an absolute love and passion for this medicine. I've been doing it for a while now. Whatever I can scan with my ultrasound and I can see my needle, I'll inject on. So, and then, I do interarticular injections. But mostly in this clinic, what we're doing is we're taking chronic illness. We're tailoring regenerative approaches to those chronic pain illnesses, and we're trying to restore normalcy. So normal tissue health, normal joint health, normal ligament tendon health. I can give you a litany of things. This week I've treated an Achilles tendon, a chronic Achilles tendonitis. I've had a pair of arthritic knees. I've got a shoulder that I saw a couple PTSD cases, erectile dysfunction in men. What else did I treat? I treated, my last case yesterday afternoon was a neck. I have an arthritic neck. I got a patient with a radicular pain symptom in their arm. And it's due to just the stenosis in the neck. So we're treating the stenosis, we're treating the arthritis in the neck, doing that guided. I use everything that I can inside of a needle that's considered regenerative in nature. And that's, that's a broad spectrum of things. For me, the basic starting point is Dextrose Prolotherapy, which is just a lot of sugar water. A higher than normal percentage of sugar than the body has in its normal extracellular, intracellular amount. So, 15 to 25% dextrose in some water with some anesthetic. And that's just, that stimulates collagen change. So you tighten up ligaments and things like that. Can stimulate cartilage growth if you put enough of it in a joint. I do a lot of PRP, which is a platelet-derived product. So I'm drawing the blood out of patients. I'm isolating their platelets in my lab. I do everything by hand. I tailor it all. I measure the cells. We have cell counters and everything like that here. So, we're really focusing on trying to isolate a condition and take a very specific treatment protocol that's evidence research based and applying those, those scientific foundations along with our clinical experience at fixing chronic things. We also do like autologous adipose derived tissue transplants. So, so we're taking, for lack of a better term, I'm taking adipose tissue. I'm trying to clean it up as best I can and isolate the extracellular matrix, which contains people's stem cells, their pluripotent cells, and also other things like macrophages and other tissue matrices. And we're transplanting that tissue into chronic degenerating joints. It's a stem cell treatment, for lack of a better term. We do autologous tissue products. So I'll take donor tissues for like chronic, or actually I have an acute shoulder tear in a rotator cuff right now in a fireman. He tore it doing dumbbell work, and we're going to take a tissue transplant and I'm going to fill the hole in his shoulder and then send him to his favorite PT, and he'll be good as new in a couple months. So, that's my passion, is to, again, stab people and regrow things.
I love, I actually jotted down one of your quotes as you were talking. You're like, I didn't know it was a quote. I like when you said, I fix what I find. That just stood out. I was like, that is nice. That's
George Goodhart said that.
Yeah,
he told me to do that.
I fix what I find. I mean, that's huge. I don't hear a lot of doctors saying that. you know, and this is why, you know, I believe that, you know, I was kind of drawn to you, and I saw what you're doing, and, you know, online, and one of the things that I love just when we're having our conversation is just so passionate about focusing on helping people. And I'm not saying that a lot of other doctors don't do that, but I feel like sometimes you can be on the right path and sometimes lose your way, you know, and just talking with you, I just could hear your passion and excitement and helping people get back on that road.
For sure, man.
You know, just anyways, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show, and, you know, blessings upon your business and helping as many people as you can. I pray you become a magnet in that city, in Portland and Beaverton area.
I'm getting busy, man. I love it. You know, I think, again, it's tailored medicine. You know, I slowed down my practice. I spent a lot of time with people, and that's really, you know, the other thing is, it's like, it saves me. I got 2 kids at home. Let's talk about life. You know, you go home, I got insanity. They're 2 and 6, right? I go to work to have a vacation.
That's a workout. You can't be tired, man.
Yeah. So
your day's just beginning when you get home. You're superhero.
Yeah, medicine to me should be slowed down and individualized. And I think that's, you know, it's just, that's what I do. Everybody has their own thing, but this is what I do. And I'm too ADD to do anything else. I love what I do, and I can't focus on more than the 4 or 5 patients a day I see. So what better way to just, you know, play to your strengths? I pander to my strengths, which is just, I talk too much. And I love people.
But that's good though, because but they're getting all of you. There's a major difference. You're able to hone in. You're basically that Mandalorian. I had to throw
there you go.
You know, but anyways, thank you so much, Dr. Woods. I keep saying Woods, Dr. Wood.
It's, one tree, not the whole forest. I'm just wood.
Forest. You know, even though I feel like that sometimes I'm playing.
Yeah.
But anyways, out there in Facebook world, Instagram, Twitter, doesn't matter where you're at. Make sure you share this. Why, my friends? Because even though if you don't have this situation, by you sharing one video, you can change one person's life out there. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Wood. And again, I love it. You fix what you find. And I know for a fact we'll be having you on the show because you've given me some ideas. And
awesome.
Again, thank you so much. And
thank you. Enjoyed it.